Hello there. Before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to ask a short favor. If you're interested in either of the two books that I have written and am about to release, head on over to my website at theanxioustruth.com/books. There you can learn about both books, one of which is free, and you can get on my mailing list to be notified when each book is released and how you can get it. I would really appreciate that. Okay, let's get rolling. All right, we are back. What's up, everybody? Drew here, thatanxietyguy.com. With me, as always,
hello again.
Billy from Anxiety United in the sunny United Kingdom.
It's not sunny, but it's
sunny.
Definitely the United Kingdom.
All right. Well, batting, that's 50%. That's not bad.
Yeah, we're halfway there.
I'd go to Vegas with those odds.
Not at the moment, perhaps, but yeah.
So we are up to episode 17 in our series here.
We are.
Very impressive track record you and I have.
Yeah, this is good. Every week.
We had a comment on Billy's channel. I believe. Did you get this on Facebook, or where did you get this? What we're going to talk about today. My stuff.
My mind's gone completely blank. It was on Facebook. It was on Facebook. Yes, sorry.
That's all right.
The majority, or well, not the majority, but a lot of the comments that I get are about being able to relate to the things that I say, because obviously I'm in the midst of all this crap myself, and I think a lot of people would like to hear your side of things. You know, although it's not really helpful for you.
No,
let's go.
I don't mind.
Let's go down that trail.
Okay.
How did Drew used to feel?
So we're going to go down memory lane with Drew today.
Yeah.
I don't really mind. It's okay. It's not that it's not helpful or unhelpful or anything. I don't mind talking about that stuff. I get asked that a lot too.
Well, this is it.
Did you feel this? Did you feel that?
I think people like to be able to relate to whether it helps them or not. It probably does, I guess, knowing that they're not the only person, because that's how often you feel, that you're the only person that feels that sensation or experiences anxiety in that circumstance. So maybe, the more we talk about maybe our experiences, hopefully it can put a few of their worries to bed. I guess that would be the key. Yeah,
I think that's fair, and I'm perfectly happy to share that stuff. Nothing is a secret, so that's fine.
Yeah.
So, all right, people have asked, what was my problem back then? What's your problem, dude? And what did I have to deal with? Did I have to deal with the same things that they did? I get asked that, like, oh, I have problems sleeping. Did you have that problem? That sort of stuff. So, I'll give you, how about the 60-second version of the whole story, and then we can go into like specifics.
Let's do it. I think let me just put out the reason for this is because people probably don't understand that you used to be in the same boat that I'm in, that I've been in, and that many other people are, because they see you now and they see that you're thriving, you're successful, business, better at many things in life, and people don't actually realize that you were as bad as we, the collective us, because they don't believe that it's possible to get to your position. So here's the proof Drew is about to share. Go.
Okay, go. Ready, go. Clock is ticking. So, all right, I'll give you the quick Reader's Digest version. I had my very first panic attack, which came like out of the blue. We say it's totally out of the blue. Yeah. It was like 1986. It was my sophomore year in college, so I'm dating myself. If you guys can do math, now you know how old I am. And I was at home. It was during spring break. I was in the house that I grew up in. I was in my bedroom, like that I had been in for thousands and thousands of nights, and suddenly it hit me. I had that derealization, depersonalization. My heart was racing, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows what a panic attack feels like. And the first time it ever hit me was then. Everything was going awesome in my life. In fact, I had a 4.0 grade point average that semester. So who the hell knows why it picked then to come out, but it did. So I had my first panic attack. It was probably one of the most terrifying experiences in my whole life. I'll never forget it till the day I die. I kind of rode it through the night, and I immediately started going down that spiral, where, is this going to happen to me again?
Yeah.
So we've talked about the difference between people who have panic attacks and the people who have panic disorder. Like almost immediately I began to like worry and focus on, is this going to happen again? I don't want that to happen again, because it was freaking horrible. So I went through a couple of very difficult months. I went back up to school, and I really struggled. I finished the semester, but I was having panic attacks often. I was starting to worry about having them all the time. Came home, Went to work that summer, had a summer job, and I remember going to see, I worked for a company that actually had a doctor and a nurse like on staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one day I was just feeling terribly, and I had sort of been friendly with the nurse because they were in the building that I was in, and I would see her and we'd say hello to each other. And I remember mentioning to her, like, I'm having this issue. And she was great. I don't remember her name, but she actually pointed me to a local psychologist, not a psychiatrist. And she said, you should go talk to this guy. His name was Dr. Friedberg. And Dr. Friedberg, if you're still alive, thank you. So I went to go see this guy. I had 2 sessions with him. He handed me the Claire Weeks book, Hope and Help for Your Nerves.
Cool.
And he said, this is, read this. And I did. And I'm not kidding you. I read the whole book in probably 6 or 8 hours because it's a small book,
Yeah.
And I literally, I took the advice to heart right away. And the next time I started having a panic attack, I'll never forget, it was in my mother's car. And I did exactly what she said to do, and it went away in 5 or 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this big revelation. And I quickly got back on my feet, and I literally did not have another panic attack for probably 10 years. And then, no shit. I know people think that sounds crazy, but that was actually true. As soon as I read the book and I said, oh, that's what this is, I knew what it was.
Yeah.
And I knew what to do. I was able to do it. And I guess I hadn't gone down far enough the negative road yet. It was only been 6 months or so for me. But I will tell you that before I read that book and before I kind of righted the ship again, I was absolutely on a downward spiral. I was constantly obsessed with how I was feeling. I was constantly taking my pulse. I was constantly worried about being dizzy. I was constantly worried about getting in the car and driving. That was always a problem for me. So, my world was starting to shrink, as can happen. And then luckily, by chance, I happened to read the book. It helped me very much, and I was good for about 10 years. And then fast forward to about 1996, I had started like my first internet-based business, and things were going really well. We were getting a ton of customers. It was like the dot-com boom, and they came back again. For whatever reason, the panic came back again, and I was not really, for whatever reason, I wasn't really able to apply all the Dr. Weeks stuff, and I just went into that downward spiral, and I got to the point where I remember very clearly, probably the lowest point, just being literally like frozen in fear in my bathroom of the house I was living in at the time.
Yeah.
Couldn't move, didn't want to leave the bathroom. It was awful. It was awful. I was also depressed. I was very clinically depressed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that point I was, I went to see a couple of doctors, and my GP at the time sat me in his office and gave me the "you have a chemical imbalance" speech.
Yep.
And he gave me Paxil, which here in the U.S. Paxil, I think Cerazat in the UK. I'm not sure. But
sure.
He gave me a prescription for Paxil. Gave me the old, if you were diabetic, you would take insulin speech. And I started taking it. Yep. And sure enough, it did work. And we'll talk about that some other day. But it worked. Within about 2 weeks. Suddenly, I felt like it was the greatest thing in the history of mankind. Because I would start to feel panic, and then it would short circuit, and my depression lifted, and I became like a real person again.
Yeah.
Or at least I thought I did. And I took that medication for a good 9 years, and I gained 100 pounds, and I was completely detached from my family and my business, and I almost lost the business and my house, and I was just a walking zombie. I didn't have panic or depression, but I didn't have anything. Yeah. I made horrific decisions. I was unhealthy. I was like living as an island. It was not a good situation. My kids, one day I'll tell that story, my kids actually shook me out of that, and I decided I need to stop taking this medication. And around that time is when that's you and I didn't meet then. That was 2005.
I think it was just after. Yeah,
it was after
it was
that.
A few years after. Yeah.
It was. So I decided that I didn't want to take the medication anymore because I couldn't keep going the way I was going. I was literally, headed for complete and utter disaster. So I stopped taking the medication. I struggled for a good year with I'll call it readaptation. Pharmaceutical companies don't like the word withdrawal, but unfortunately, I was one of those 35% of the people who experienced that. It was very bad. That was a different animal, I think, because it was probably more chemical in nature than anything else. There was nothing I could do to stop it except wait for time to pass. Yeah. And I lived just a nightmare of constant crippling panic and anxiety and depression and a roller coaster up and down and obsessive, irrational, overpowering thoughts 24/7. Couldn't sleep. I am telling you, if you feel like you are a mess, I absolutely know, because I was a complete and utter mess, like fetal position in tears I'm not ashamed to admit that. It was horrific. It just beat me right to the ground. But I kind of stuck through it. I got out of that. And, things were going fairly well. I was a little tenuous. And then you and I met probably around 2008, and I started sliding backwards again.
My fault.
No, not your fault at all. When I found you on YouTube, it was because I was looking for other people. Like, we had gotten to that point where, there is a YouTube, and I can go and look to see if anybody has made videos about that. And I remember the first guy that I found was a guy by the name of JP. I don't think his channel is still there. JP of Diamonds. He was from Sweden.
Right.
And he made a long series of videos just sitting at his desk with his desk lamp on him, talking about his panic and anxiety situation. It was awesome. And then I found you and Sarah and a few other people, Chris in Ohio.
Yeah.
But in those days, I was in that, I had slid backward again. And my issue then wasn't so much depression, although it was definitely anxiety, and an agoraphobia was setting in quickly. Because again, now I was experiencing it without that sort of chemical shield in front of me for the first time.
Yeah.
And I would not go back on the medication, no matter what. I would not do it. I swore that I would never ever do that again, and I won't. So I had to deal with it just sort of naturally, and it absolutely kicked my ass for a good 6 months or more. When you and I first met, I was in a bad spot. You've seen the old videos.
Yeah.
So people ask, did you ever have problems sleeping? Yes. I would fall asleep. I'm a night owl anyway. I don't sleep a whole lot, but I would fall asleep at midnight and then wake up again at 3 o'clock in the morning and not be able to go back to sleep. I literally resorted to like white noise app on my phone with headphones and a sleep mask to keep the light out. I tried all that. I would wake up in the morning and just immediately my stomach would be in a knot. The minute I opened my eyes, the anxiety would automatically kick in. I wouldn't want to get out of bed. I wouldn't want to go to work. I wouldn't want to leave the house. I wouldn't want to get in the car. It was getting harder and harder to do all of those things. I couldn't drive my daughter to her horseback riding lessons. I didn't want to go literally a 30-second drive from my house. There's a little dairy store. I wouldn't want to go there and buy eggs for the family. It was horrible. I couldn't be home. I didn't want to be home alone. I didn't want to be alone. So monophobia comes along with agoraphobia very often. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that, but it's normal. If you're agoraphobic, there's a really good chance that you also are terrified to be alone. You need to always have somebody with you. And I know I'm just rambling here, but I had all of those things. I had always checking my pulse, always worried about, I couldn't feel like I couldn't breathe all the time. Like, again, the racing thoughts came back, the obsessive thinking came back. All of those things came back, and I cannot tell you how crappy it was. Not to tell you, I mean, you guys know because you're going through it. I own my own business. I couldn't go, and you know this because you saw the videos. It was a challenge for me to go to my own office, which was literally like an 8-minute drive from home. I isolated myself. It was bad. It was very bad. I mean, I could think of all the symptoms. I had them all. All the time.
Well, that's it. We used to discuss, we'd obviously go out and do something, and we'd talk about exactly how it felt. And pretty much, if anybody's ever watched any of my exposure videos, that's exactly how you used to feel, isn't it?
Yes, it was.
Exactly the same.
I had my little orange point-and-shoot camera back then.
Yeah.
And I would take that everywhere. And I have to tell you, in my journey, and I was asked, I went live on Facebook just to play with my new camera a couple of weeks ago. And somebody popped in who I've known for many years too. And she said, well, what did you start doing different? I knew what I had to do. I mean, the Claire Weeks thing from many, many years ago, 1986, 87, taught me the foundation. I do have a background in behavioral psychology. That was my minor as an undergrad. And I've just always been into that sort of stuff. So I always knew in my heart what I had to do. And it was just a matter of being cornered to the point where it's like, I either have to change this or I don't know what's going. I'm going to lose everything. I can't. Yeah. I'm letting down my family. I'm letting down my kids. Canceling trips, not seeing friends. I couldn't go to lunch with a friend for God's sake. It was horrible. Living in constant anticipation of like, is somebody going to ask me to leave the house? Is somebody going to ask me to do something? Do I have to go anywhere? Do I have to drive anywhere? You can probably relate to these things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and so I was there. I know all of these things. So when somebody says to me, I have to, hey, I get this all the time. Hey, Drew, I have to go to a wedding. I have a hard time going to the supermarket, and I have to go to a wedding in another state next week. What do I do? Like, that was me. That was me too.
Yeah,
so I'm probably glossing over a lot of details. Feel free to ask questions on behalf of everybody else.
People probably, I don't know whether maybe it's a jealousy thing because I feel like envious of your situation now. But, it's not because you were lucky that you managed to break free of it. It's because you put in the hard work. And everybody that's sitting here watching thinking he's a lucky sod. Look at him now. It's got nothing to do with luck.
I'm going to say that there's probably an element of luck, and I will tell you where luck comes in. Or I don't know what. Call it whatever you want. Luck comes in because I found people like you and Chris and Sarah and Emma, and I'm trying to think. Seth, who's in Australia? I can't think of the names right now, but that group that grew into Panic Station when we had Panic Station, which was, those were good people. Those were awesome people. Natalie here on Long Island. And that was the luck part in a way. Like and I was afforded the opportunity. And I will never underestimate. And people ask me sometimes, well, why you do this? You can make money on this podcast or whatever. And I feel like I owe it because you guys were there. And I think the biggest difference, so look, let me just say this. You could pick a symptom that you've had. I've probably had it. You could pick a sensation that you've had. I've probably felt it. You could pick a fear that you have. I've probably been afraid of that. I was afraid to be the first person to take a drink out of the milk carton in case it had been poisoned. Literally. And that was an obsessive thought. I couldn't watch the news. I couldn't read a newspaper. I was obsessed with death and dying. I had intrusive thoughts all the time. Pick a symptom. I have lived it. No doubt about that. But in the end, it wasn't so much, I put in the hard work, but I also was surrounded by people who were cheering me on in a way.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot.
Right?
Yeah.
And I cannot underestimate the value of that. It's one thing to know, well, I have to do this. It's another thing to know, well, I'm going to go do this. And I know Billy's doing it right now. And I know Sarah was doing it right now. I know Emma's doing it right now. And these are people that I will forever be indebted to. Maybe Emma's not, I don't know if Emma's watching this or not, but if Emma maybe not know the impact that she had on my life. So surrounding yourself with people who are going through the same thing is good, but it wasn't a group that was just commiserating. Chris in Ohio, who I'm still Facebook friends with, we interact now and then. That guy, I'm never going to be able to repay him for showing me his struggle and getting out there and challenging it and doing what he needed to do. And it would inspire me to do it too. So
it's odd. There's the two people that you've just mentioned, Chris and Emma. They both seem to be thriving now, as are you. But then there's people like myself, and I know that Sarah still struggles with her stuff. So there must be something that either we didn't pick up on, or there's something that just didn't click for us, or were we not putting enough effort in, or what? I know that's the $1 million question.
It is a $1 million question.
What did we miss? What did we miss?
And I think it's always the $1 million question. I can't answer that question either. But I think if I look at that group too, I would think, I'm sort of thinking as I go here, this is a good. This is actually helpful for me to go through.
I think let's just pause for a second and just say thank you for sharing that, because that was I think that's going to help people massively to understand that you've been there, you've been through it. So the stuff that you're saying is not from a textbook. This isn't something that you've learned. No. This is something that you've lived, and that's why you're the right man to tell us what to freaking do.
I mean, I'm just going to share my experiences. I'm not going to say I'm right or wrong for anything in particular, but I did live it. I lived it several times. And if it helps, it didn't. Yes, the first time was a little weird. I read a book and didn't have another panic attack. That's weird. I will admit that's an anomaly. But it wasn't like I had a few panic attacks for a few months and I figured out what to do and I was all better. Literally from 1986 or through 1996 through 2010. And we're talking about 12 to 14 years where I was either medicated and having a horrible time of that, or dealing with anxiety, depression, agoraphobia, all of those things. It was a big chunk of my adult life has been spent putting a lot of time and effort into these issues. So it took time, and I failed a bunch of times until I figured it out and started to get it right. But I will never forget. I know you've seen the video. I'm sure you've forgotten it. It's nothing to you. I have them, and I have several people who've asked, do you have videos like Billy's? And I do. I have to find them. They're somewhere on a hard drive, either here or at my house. And one day I will find a few and I'll post them. There was one night that I did actually have to go at night back to my data center where I had racks and racks full of equipment because that's the business that I'm in, or at least was in at the time. And there was a server down, and I could have called somebody else who worked for me to go do it, but that person would have had to driven 35 minutes. I was 7 minutes away.
Yep.
And I remember I was sitting at my desk at my house when it happened, and I was actually watching one of Chris's videos. And I don't remember what he had done. He was out for a walk, whatever it was. And he used to walk down this rural part of Ohio. You remember these videos? He would walk down this like endless country road. Like there was nothing there. It was very unnerving to watch that. There's no help. There's no people. There's no nothing. And I remember watching him do it, and he would talk into the camera like we would do it back in those days. And I was watching Chris as the alert came in that this needed to be done. And my first instinct was to say, all right, let me call so-and-so. He's on call. I'm going to have him do it. As Chris's video was playing on my screen, and it dawned on me, like, this mofo is out there walking down this crazy deserted country road. Surely I can do this. Yeah. And I took water, and I took my Altoid mints, and I took my camera, and it was pitch black. You couldn't see what the hell I was filming. You couldn't see me. Yeah. But it was a crutch, and I took the camera in, and I remember thinking, like, I'm a quarter of the way there. I'm halfway there. I'm 3/4 of the way there. 7-minute drive, dude. And I had to break it down. I stopped halfway in the parking lot of a diner. I'm like, all right, I'm halfway there. And I remember filming that, talking to nobody in particular, but just talking to the camera. I'm 3/4 of the way. I'm there. I remember thinking, okay, great. I went in the building shaking, sweating. I was a mess. And then there was that thing where it's like, I'm going to hit the button on the server. Please, God, let it boot correctly. Because if it doesn't, I don't know what I'm going to do. It was a harrowing experience. And I didn't do that right. I white-knuckled through the whole thing. So that was wrong. What I did was not correct there. And I remember sitting and waiting, and if I watched that video back, I was breathing like I was at a marathon. And, my eyes were like, just the fear in my eyes, waiting, and bam, it came up, and I'm like, good. And the minute the login screen appeared, I knew I was good. The server was back online. I remember, hitting the lights and just hightailing out of that place, get in my car, head home. And as soon as I started driving home, suddenly, I felt like Thor, like a freaking superhero. And I remember thinking that night, like, I want this feeling more. Yeah. And I did it wrong, but I got through it. And that was the night that I remember it started. Like, okay, this is stupid now. I have to do this. So.
Well, you was inspired by a video.
I was inspired by Chris. Yeah.
There's one of mine that I always. Like, that was one of my favorites that I ever did, was when I was sitting in the car and I tried to walk like 100 yards down. I was in the town outside the bowling alley.
Yeah.
I tried to walk like 100 yards, and then the camera cut, and I was back in the car smoking a cigarette, just freaking. Yep. And then I went and parked somewhere else and just waited until I felt the urge to go and do it. Do you remember that?
I remember very clearly.
And then I walked like to the edge of town on my own, and I just felt like it was crazy.
There was a tennis court and a parking.
That's right. Yeah. That video is still on. It's one of my most popular old exposure ones. I'm sitting in the car in a red coat.
Yes.
And it's just like, I'm just waiting for this moment when I've got the confidence to just.
Yep.
I say, fuck it.
Yes, that's exactly right. And you just opened the car door and went. And I remember watching I literally remember like, you're like, yes, like literally like you're watching a movie and you're like Rocky against Apollo Creed. Come on, damn it. And I remember the feeling you had getting back in the car. And I remember
I was saying, you better praise me.
Yes, I remember that, looking into the camera. You best be praising me for this. But the feeling was, I remember, I could see it in your face, being so happy. And I remember another time where you had gone, it's so silly now we're just reminiscing about stuff, but maybe it'll help people, I don't know. You had to go to Birmingham. You drove to
the Birmingham shop, the club shop.
Right. Yeah. To the pitch, right? So I remember watching that too, and just you were so happy having had done it.
Didn't you remade the video with a soundtrack over?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, that's right. Oh, it got taken down too because I used some song. I remember the song I used, and YouTube didn't like that copyright shit. But yeah, it was pretty funny.
I went back there not too long ago in a video. I went back to the blues thing, got out of the car and took a thumbnail picture out there. Yeah.
Was it nearly as hard as it was then? I'm thinking it's not. I'm not saying
It was
it's easy, but
Yeah, no, it was nowhere near as hard. But I think the anticipation was probably the same. But I think that's the problem that I have now. Is that, like, perhaps because I've got so many negative memories, that the anticipation of doing anything, like I think about, even just going to my local shop,
right.
and I don't really have a problem with doing it, and I go and do it. But like, if I sit here and think about it, I can talk myself out of it very, very easily.
Yeah. But if you don't think about it, I'm guessing you're able to do a whole lot. You're not the same person now that you were.
It's weird because I feel like I'm completely restricted. Like, I literally, I haven't been in a supermarket. Like, I went in a big shop the other week, but
Right.
I haven't been in a supermarket for, I would say, over a year.
Hmm.
Probably. And I haven't been to watch my daughter dance for a couple of years. The last time I went, I had a panic attack in the theatre.
Yeah.
And because while people are dancing, like the kids are on the stage doing their thing, they won't let people out.
Yep.
So this was mid-dance. I was having a panic attack, and they wouldn't open the door for me. So it was like, shit.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So
that's a bad experience then.
But it was good in a way because it meant that I had to just sit there and ride it out, which I did. And by the time the kid had finished dancing and the door was open,
Right.
the moment had sort of passed anyway. So it was probably a good thing that they didn't let me out.
I think sometimes if you really think about that, like if I think about my progress, there were things that I didn't do also for a very long time. But it kind of got to the point where it just became a habit to not do them.
I think that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Right. As opposed to like, oh, I'm terrified to do this. I don't want to do this. It just became like a habit. Like, oh, I don't do that. And I remember thinking at one point, like, I went to the shopping mall, which is from my house. It's maybe a 10-minute ride. So it's a fairly large mall. And I hadn't been in there alone for a really long time. And I remember thinking one night, it was like a Friday night, like, wait, I don't go there. Why don't I go there? And I went, and there was anxiety because I just hadn't done it in so long.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes you get to the point where it's like, well, it's just a habit that I'm not doing these things. It's not because I feel like I can't or I won't. It's just I haven't for so long, right?
It's not even a decision you make, is it? You go, like, I take my wife to the shop, to the supermarket, and like she just gets out of the car, she goes in, and it's not even, are you coming in?
No.
It's not. I'm not even having that debate with myself. I'm
Right.
going to give it a try because I'm just not. But incidentally, it was weird the other day. I took my wife to the local supermarket. Like, it's not far away, but there's a piece of trim on the car that's come unstuck, so I needed to glue it.
Sure.
And she went into the shop, and I was sitting, and I thought, I'll just do this. So I got out of the car and I was fiddling with this thing, and then I done it, and then I got back in the car and I thought to myself, that might be the first time in many years that I've actually concentrated on doing something outside the house and not been thinking about how I'm feeling.
Really?
It was really weird. I was like 100% just focused on what I was doing.
Yeah.
And there was no thought of anxiety or, God, I'm standing outside the car feeling weird. It was real weird.
So it was just automatic.
It was nice. Yeah, it was just nice because the only thoughts that I had was, this better bloody stick. That's all I could think.
Yeah, but
like, I am fixing this.
That's what a normal, so-called normal person would
do.
Right?
Because I often think to myself, like, if my missus, we're sitting have a chat, me and my missus, and I'm like, what do you actually think about? Because I find it hard to believe that people can just do stuff without having thoughts, and that's like people do. They walk around the supermarket and they're not really thinking about anything.
No.
And like, I can't remember what that feels like. No way.
It feels good.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the first time I remember that happening to me, there were many, actually, I shouldn't say the first time. In the things that I went through, there were many times or several times that happened when I was coming off the medication and dealing with that. I remember one night, I had been to work and came home, ate dinner, like with the family. And we were just sitting playing with the dog. And I remember, maybe it was a minute or two, I don't remember. But I remember the thought popping into my head, like, wow, I just spent 2 minutes just petting the dog. Mm-hmm, like all I cared about was like petting Lexi. I wasn't thinking about myself for 2 minutes. And it was such a revelation. Like, oh, I forgot what that was like to just like be on autopilot.
Yeah, that's what it was like the other day.
Because
did that then make you sort of start questioning, and then you'd tense up? Maybe that was probably in the early stages.
That was different because I was dealing with the readaptation or withdrawal after the medication. And there was really nothing I could do. I learned a tremendous amount of coping skills there. When I came to the conclusion, and I still believe this, like the only thing that fixes that, if you're going through that right now, is time. There weren't any herbs. There was nothing to swallow. There was nothing to drink. There was nothing to do. It was just chemistry. So my receptor sites had to upregulate again, and that's just the way that goes. And I learned a lot of coping skills. That was a horrific 6 or 8 months. I would do it again today because of the things that I learned going through that when you couldn't stop it. There was no stopping it. So no amount of relaxing or breathing or meditating or being brave and strong or whatever you want to call it would stop it. It would just keep coming at you. And I just learned to let it be and just like, it's just going to be time. Just going to be time. So that episode to me was like a beacon. Like if I could be normal for 2 minutes, then, I can be normal again. It's not impossible. So I remember thinking that. So every time I would have a breakthrough like that, I think, or realize that I wouldn't second guess it and start having those thoughts again, or it wouldn't trigger me. It would actually be, I would interpret it as a good sign. Like this is progress happening.
A little celebration,
A little bit, this is progress. And I would try and build on that. Like, the day that I got in the car and just, no problem. Like, I remember getting to the point where my kids were smaller in elementary school, but I remember getting to the point where it's like, I'll just drive them to school. Because I spent so many mornings getting up when everybody was sleeping in the freezing cold, putting on my jacket and my hat and everything, getting in the car and just driving around, driving to the school. The school was literally like not even a mile from my house, and I would have to practice going there. And I remember thinking, because I want to be able to drive my kids to school or pick them up.
Isn't it strange, though, how you can sort of learn to do, or back then you could learn to do certain things, but if you had to drive in the other direction, maybe you'd have a complete
whole different animal.
Exactly what we've been saying for weeks, it's the interpretation of the feelings, because you're probably where you are exactly the same physical person doing whatever it is.
Right.
It's just how you're interpreting whatever it is you're doing.
Same guy, same level of safety, same everything, same life, same everything. Just why is this street scarier than this street? It's not. It's only I think it is.
Yeah.
And I will also tell you that even so, that building that I used to have a problem going to where my business was, and we moved out of that building years ago, probably 4 years ago now. And even then, so when I was, at that point living a pretty normal life, even 4 years ago, I was out of that building, but going to that building even to that day was still, there was always that undercurrent. And I think it's just our brains that is survival. And I do believe in a way there's a lot of survival instinct in that.
Yeah.
When you perceive danger, your brain is really good at trying to steer you around that. And to the day I moved out of that building, there was always a slight undercurrent of anxiety in that building. And even after moving out of that building, I would probably say it's only in the last year or so that if I drive the same path, I do not get that twinge anymore. Even 2 years after being out of the building, if I drove near it, past it, toward it like I used to, I would, and I know the turn, I would hit one spot where this was the point of no return. When I would be out doing my practice, I'm going to go to the end of this block where the diner is. If I make this right turn, I am committed. Because I'd be on a big road, I couldn't turn around. That turn would give me that just a little twinge every time I did it for years. So people also ask me like, "Oh, you're cured?" Well, and I've said this before on the podcast. Like, no, not necessarily cured, just because it's still there, and if I'm not careful, it can come back. But if that helps, it's not like, "Oh, that's it. I'll never think about this again." Some things get ingrained deeply. They do. Yeah. So
that's it. It's that memory association.
Yeah. So I don't know. I could sit and talk about every symptom that I had, but that's I probably had them all.
We'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, I probably had them all. I mean, there were some things that I didn't get. I'm sure we don't all get every symptom, but for me, it was several times where there was a huge struggle. So I will assert that there's probably nobody listening to us right now that was any worse than I was.
Yeah.
And that you have been, and that any of us have been. And I will offer this bit of advice, and I tell people this all the time: stop judging your anxiety as worse. Like, oh, I'm worse than you.
Yeah.
I have it. You didn't have it like this, or whoever, whether you're talking to me or anybody else. It's not. Nobody has it any worse. Anxiety is
That's it. I
anxiety.
mean, because people just see you standing there, they see me sitting here, and we both look absolutely fine.
Right.
I can assure you. But it's like in the past when I have been out and stuff, and like I'll say I'm feeling really weird, and my missus will say, "Well, you just look absolutely normal.
Right.
Like, you don't look any." And I'm questioning, like, have I gone pale? You know.
Yeah.
Am I sweating? Do I look weird? Am I shaking? Nope. You look exactly as you did.
If you didn't say anything
on the
to
couch.
her.
Yeah, exactly.
She probably wouldn't have even known.
Mm.
Yeah, I've had that situation. Like, hey, and I've said that several times in the past few years, like, just sitting there with something like, well, right now I'm having a swinging panic attack right now. Like, you are? Like, really? You are? Oh. So, you're right. Who would know? Like, nobody would even know.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, you got to stop judging it as... I exchanged messages the other day with somebody, and, he kept talking about this horrific, how horrible it was, horrible experience, horrible. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I've used those words in this episode just now, horrific, horrible, crushing. I've used all those negative adjectives. But in a way, you have to... For me, one of the big turning points was I'm going to stop judging this as being anything. Like, I'm not going to deny it's bad. Nobody wants to feel this way, but I'm not going to keep calling it horrible. It just is. And, like, my heart isn't racing any differently than your heart would race or anybody's heart would race. And I didn't breathe any heavier than anybody else. And you can't get any dizzier. You're either dizzy or you're not dizzy. It's sort of a binary thing. So, I don't know. It's a big lesson.
That's it.
So that's it. That's my rambling. I've completely monopolized the airwaves here.
Can I talk now?
Sure, you can talk. I'm being very rude.
Oh, dear. Yes, I had noticed. So, for anybody that's wondering, there was a comment on episode 16 that said it's their first time tuning in, and the guy on the right seems a little rude. So I'm not 100% sure if they meant my right, which is him.
Or their right, my right.
Or their right, so yeah.
I believe when you're watching these videos, I believe you are on the right. I'm not saying you're rude or anything.
I am on the right, and that's what I've been stressing about this all week. I've just told Drew before we started, like, the guy on the right seems a little rude, but I thought I was the good boy. Jesus Christ.
I know.
You're the feather
ruffler.
ruffler.
Ruffling Neanderthal from New York.
Yeah.
Well, he's the well-mannered lad from the UK. Come on.
This is it.
If anybody's rude, damn it, I'm rude. It's my gig.
Yeah, come on.
So what do we want to do? You want to take any questions?
I was just looking at the questions that we had. We had a few on episode 16.
Which I haven't even posted yet.
I know, yeah. What is with that? Come on.
I've been so busy. I'll post
Falling behind.
I know.
There was one question about... I think we were going to save this for a separate podcast, but it was wondering if we could touch on how we can stay positive in the face of family members or friends that are not understanding or perhaps judgmental.
Yeah.
When anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia takes over a person's life. It's an interesting topic, isn't it? And this person has lost many people in life because of extreme anxiety, and it can be quite disheartening.
Sure.
I mean, I'm pretty much the same. I don't really class myself as having any real friends, like not in person that I could talk to, other than via the internet, which is pretty sad. I used to have a lot of friends, but I guess they used to invite me out and stuff, and then I'd say no, whether it was if I was honest and said no because of anxiety, they probably wouldn't have understood anyway, but I'd probably usually just make up some excuse. And then I guess people just get bored of asking. Well, it's like when my missus don't ask me if I want to go in the supermarket anymore. It's pretty much exactly the same thing. Yeah,
you're probably right. I think, and that's worthy of its own episode. That was a good comment. Yeah. We'll do one like that. And then we had one a couple of weeks ago from somebody who said, maybe we could talk about, not that we talked about this, like maybe we could do a video for people who are with people like you and me. Like, what do you do? And someone, but they're probably not watching. So
yeah, exactly.
I think it's a good topic. I think just to quickly touch on it, my gut tells me that when you lose people in your life because of these situations, it's probably a combination. I know I would isolate myself just out of fear. And then people don't understand or they don't want to be around that. So it's a little bit of both. It's not that people, and I've heard this before, like, oh, everybody abandoned me or no one cares or no one understands, so they leave me. It's probably not all that. It's probably a little of both. There's a
Yeah,
little,
yeah, I would say. I always just found it easier. Perhaps it's easier for me to not have to explain and
sure,
to not have to go to the pub for a Swifty. You know, it's just easier. It's more comfortable to not.
Of course,
That's the problem.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll talk about that. It's good because it's
just out of interest. How did your wife deal with your anxiety back then? Like, if you were let's just example, you're panicking in the supermarket and you're with your wife. What's the response?
Okay, here's probably the best way I can answer that question. I mean, I didn't hide it from her. You know, I wouldn't hide it from her. I would try to hide it from my kids because they were small. But I wouldn't hide it from her. And I think, first of all, she deserves a medal, for sure, for going through that with me multiple times.
Yeah, yeah.
And second of all, she, I think, would think, what can I do here? But saw that there was not a whole lot that she could do. And she, to her credit, would just give me the space to handle it the way I needed to handle it, in a way. Yeah. So what was my wife's reaction? I think she tried not to react. I will give her credit for following my lead a little bit. This is just the way I'm wired. I do not want to be taken care of. I do not need to be coddled. I don't want your sympathy. But I've always been like that. It's just part of my nature. So I leaned on her in a big way. In my worst times, she was my safe person. And she would just quietly fulfill that position without, I think, coddling me because she knew I didn't want to be coddled. So her reaction often was no reaction. Like, I know you have this covered. If you need my help, you'll ask for it. And that's kind of how that went. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. There were times, though, when, I was in the car and freaking out, and I would call her. I've been on the phone with her at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
Because I was out working or putting out a fire or something like that, and in a complete panic, in the car on the way back, not sure if I was going to make it back, and I would wake her up and she would talk to me. So I have done that.
Yeah.
The things that I always say not to do, I've done them.
Yeah.
So,
he's human.
Gee, I have done them, yes. So, but the people, close to me in my life, I think I didn't try to hide it from them, but I feel like I didn't lean on them a whole lot because I'm just not, not generally that person anyway. Which I'm not saying it's bad. That's just the way I am. It doesn't make me right.
Yeah, I feel like sort of my missus can't do right for doing wrong when they try and help. It's like...
It's hard.
It's really hard for them to... Because, number one, they don't understand. So if they try and help you, come on, you can make it. It's like, no, I fucking can't. But then if they don't try and egg you on, you're like, you don't care. They're in such a difficult position. It is a topic for a whole freaking podcast, man.
It is, and I don't know if it's, because, odds are your wife, she wouldn't need to watch us. So people who are with people like us wouldn't be looking for the podcast. But I think for me, I would love to talk about it just because of the acknowledgement of what our role is in that, in a way. So I never...
Like, how should we expect other people to...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would have to say that I think I had a little bit of a leg up because of the stupid isolationist way, like pig-headed, stubborn way that I am. Like, I'm going to do it myself. I've always been that way. Like, I don't need you. I'm going to do it myself. In a way, it helped because I think it took some of the burden. I mean, there was burden. I freely admit that I put a burden on the household and the people close to me. And they were concerned about me. My mother, I know, very concerned about me. I might lean on her a little bit more back in those days. But I didn't expect anything from them, and that helped, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I don't expect you to do anything. I know you can't fix this or save me, so I don't know if that matters at all. I never expected anybody to understand. I don't care if you didn't have to understand.
Yeah, that helps. That's it. You've said that, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to understand. It's okay.
There's another part to that question.
Sure.
Just commenting on how to stay connected with people while being housebound. Any tips there? I guess, unfortunately, social media.
I know. Oh, we're doing it right now. I mean,
Oh, dear.
We're a 6-hour flight apart and communicating, so... I think it's a double-edged sword. It's sword. I actually pronounced the W. What the hell?
Sword.
What's sword? What's up with that? So I think it's a double-edged sword because it's cool that we have this technology now so you can communicate with people.
Yeah. But the problem is
it's bad
you don't go and communicate with them.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's also bad because it can be a crutch. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to go out to the pub to see my real life friends because I can just get on the internet. So in a way, the technology is awesome, but it's also a bit of an enabler, I think.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a good question. We'll talk about that for sure.
Somebody commented and said that they do watch the whole video because we always say at the end, if you've got this far.
We're at 44 minutes. I will give full credit to anybody who made it to this point in this video, just watching me ramble for a better part of 30 minutes.
Somebody said they always get anxiety at its worst at 8 p.m. and they think about certain foods that they eat because it's going to make their acid reflux come. And they'll panic from eating this or that. And we spoke about this before we went live, but I said that I have struggled terribly with acid reflux and indigestion it's been a couple of years, man. Certain foods that I eat, if I eat them, say, after 6 p.m. or something, then I get it. But I have noticed, and whether it's anything to do with it, but I've been off the caffeine now for, is it 3 weeks? It's 2 or 3 weeks.
It's been a while.
And I haven't experienced it. And I even had a little plug here for Domino's pizza, and that is 100% acid reflux after eating Domino's, and I had it last weekend and I didn't get it.
Wow.
So read into that what you will, whether it's anything to do with caffeine. I don't know how or why it would.
Could be.
But yeah.
I think especially if health anxiety is an issue, like anything that makes your body feel differently.
Yeah.
The heartburn, the acid reflux, which is no fun.
Yeah. Drop the caffeine.
Drop the caffeine is never a bad idea. It's really hard because I know many people are just literally physically dependent upon it.
Yeah, that's my lifestyle choice for the week. There was something we spoke about before. I was talking about, so it's a UK thing, but the NHS are trialing this thing where they're refusing minor surgery to anybody that is, maybe not anybody, but most people that are overweight or that smoke and make unhealthy lifestyle choices. So not major surgery. If their leg falls off, they're going to fix it. But anybody, I don't know, like ingrowing toenails, stuff like that, maybe.
Yeah.
They're refusing to do the surgery until they start to look after themselves. And it got me thinking about, like, when we go to the GP and the first thing we're offered is medication or maybe the talking therapy, it might be a good suggestion for GPs if there's any watching. I very much doubt it. But why not, suggest to people, look, we're not going to give you this diazepam. We're not going to send you for CBT until you get some exercise, at least for a month. Try stop smoking.
Yeah.
Let's start eating healthily. Make those lifestyle choices and see, because that might be all it takes. What's your thoughts?
My thoughts on that? I think it's not a bad idea, and I think I don't know if I would go so far as to say we're not going to send you for CBT or help you until you get on a treadmill, because that's a tough one. I think to me that sort of hints at that, like, you can fix your anxiety with your diet or exercise.
Yeah.
Those are things that can contribute to improving the situation. But I don't know how responsible it would be for a doctor to say, I'm not going to do anything until you exercise for a month. But that being said, I think it's smart for the doctor to make you an active participant in your recovery, right? Yeah. Wherever possible. Like if your leg falls off, well, you can't do anything about that. They have to fix it. But I remember when my leg fell off. That was tough. But
I remember the video.
Remember? that was difficult. But it was very messy. But I think there's nothing wrong with being an active participant. Like, part of this process is maybe we're going to give you some medication. We're going to send you to see this therapist. And you also have to do these things.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
Perhaps instead of medication being the first, because that in the UK, that's the first thing
you
hear it so often. You will go to the doctors, here's some pills.
Yeah.
Come and see me and, well, no, let's get it right. Here's some pills. You're going to feel worse within the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear that.
No.
What about going in and saying, okay, go home, exercise, eat healthily. Let's see if you feel worse within 2 weeks, because you're pretty much guaranteed to feel better after 2 weeks of making those choices.
Yeah.
Rather than having the medication. And we're not talking about medication for psychosis and schizophrenia and that. We're talking about anxiety here.
Sure. Yeah, I think
that's my thought.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thought. We don't entirely disagree. I think it's how the approach would be. It's the changing the approach and what that symbolizes. I think I could definitely get behind. Like a little more explanation. Like, this feels horrible, but what's wrong with the doctor saying, I know this feels really horrible and scary, but I assure you it is not going to kill you. So let's try this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to give you these pills, this benzodiazepine. You know, try doing these things. Take one if you think you need to.
Yeah,
I would get behind that 100% as opposed to, I'm going to write you a prescription. Here's 90 Xanax.
Yeah.
Just take them 3 times a day, and I'll see you in 2 months for a refill. That I cannot get behind that plan. I'm sorry. I just can't. So, yeah, there's a lot of ways that we could change this and make it better. There, here. We're medicating first also.
Does it come down to finance at the end of the day? There's more money in medication than there is in selling exercise bikes.
If I am GlaxoSmithKline, sure. I don't want to hear like I'm not going to give you a prescription. I want that guy. I want that pad on fire, man.
Isn't pharmaceuticals like the biggest industry? One of the biggest industries in the world financially.
It is. Pharmaceutical companies are large. They spend tremendous amounts of money on lobbying here in the U.S., which I'm sure they do in any place where they get an influence in the vote. I don't want to turn this into a pharmaceutical conspiracy theory thing, but we'll do one of those.
Yes.
But sure, drug companies are in business. They are businesses. I own a business. I'm here to make money. That is I'm unapologetic about that. My business is designed to make a profit. Theirs is too, so I don't take that away from them. But, you know, at what point? My dog died. It felt horrible. Handing me, 60 days worth of Prozac is bullshit in plain English. Pardon my French, but I should be sad the dog died. Like, welcome to the human race, brother. I'm not saying that all of it is like that, but we are so heavily over-medicated in the U.S. Don't get me started.
It's like we've spoke about before when, I suppose the best thing for us to come from doing these videos is that nobody watches them because everybody's got out there, done their stuff, Whereas you see the programs and that are on the net for sale will help you with your anxiety. They need to make the money to keep their business going. So they want more people to be suffering, essentially, really. They thrive off people that are suffering from it. Whereas for us, we want to get to a point where we have 0 viewers because we're getting 0 ad revenue.
Yes, yeah.
These swines. But that's the point, isn't it?
That is true. It's a really good point. And we're off on a tangent a little bit. We're at 51 minutes, but yes, it's true. If your product is medication, you need people who have reasons to take it. So it's not surprising that, and I don't want to get too far into this, but a huge pet peeve of mine. We're in it. Fuck it. Well, sorry. You could bleep that one. We are going down a rabbit hole. Here in the U.S., it's less now because cooler heads are starting to prevail. But I could not. When I was at my worst coming off my medication, my doctor, who I will stand by to this day, he stuck with me. He gave me the line that he got from the pharmaceutical companies, which is there is no such thing as withdrawal. This is your original problem coming back. You need to get back on the medication. And I basically told him, you can stick a knife in my heart before I take another one of those pills. And he said, okay, we'll do it your way. And I would go see him twice a week because he was very concerned about me. Yeah. And I could not walk into that office and sit in that waiting room without seeing a very attractive young lady in a short skirt with food, free lunch, and samples of some drug or another, all pervasive all the time. And the pharmaceutical companies have had a stranglehold or a very large influence on the way medicine was practiced in the U.S. I don't know if it's the same in the U.K., but it was an issue. Oh, you could not go to a doctor's office. Not for us. The lunch wasn't for me. The lunch was for the doctor and his staff.
Oh, I was going to say.
No, it was influence peddling in a big way. We're going to keep every day there was another spread at my doctor's office.
Picturing you getting sandwiches.
I'm freaking starving, man. How about I'll take one of those. And they would bring every day was a free lunch from some, and I could not sit there for 20 minutes waiting in the waiting room without having 1 or 2 pharmaceutical reps walk in the door with their samples with some sort of gift and can I see the doctor? And they would be like, well, he's really busy right now. Well, can you tell him so-and-so is here? And this is the way we did it. I don't see that anymore here. So it is changing to a certain extent.
The only thing we get at the doctors here is 6-month out-of-date magazines on a table. That's it. Read them and weep.
Hey, look, it's a review of the 1987 Camaro.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's covered in spittle that people have been coughing out.
Well,
Nice.
that's bleak. That is very bleak, and it's foggy and cloudy because it's England.
It's
yes,
beautiful. Beautiful.
So, anyway,
Let me have a look. We've got
Sure,
something else.
sure.
There was something Johnny Q. He posted about, because I was mentioning different scents and sounds and foods, and he was saying that pizza. He ate pizza once, had like 3 panic attacks the day after, and then stayed off pizza,
won't eat another
which is
pizza.
completely irrational. But that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about, isn't it? He does now eat pizza, by the way.
Good job, Johnny.
Well done, man.
I want pizza right now.
Domino's. That's bad for you.
It's
Unless you don't have caffeine, then you'll be all right.
Then you're okay. The lack of caffeine shields you from the negative effects of the pizza. But
I don't know if you remember Paula from Panic Station days. She lived in the UK.
Paula, a little bit. I remember the name.
She commented on the last video just saying, "Wow, I've just realised who Drew is." She remembers you from Panic Station.
I'll have to look at that. Yeah, I'll have to look.
And she's now doing exposure, so she's like, I would say she's probably worse off than myself. She's really, really struggled with stuff, but she has a health visitor that goes in and like sets her different tasks and stuff. So she's working really hard as well. I just thought we should say hello to Paula. I know she watches the stuff, and like I've had a back and forth with her before because she doesn't live too far away from me.
Oh, very
so
cool.
It'd be cool. But I don't know if I've ever mentioned, or like recently I set up a Facebook group just for the local area. I think that there's only like 50 members in it, and I posted in there the other day just saying about a local meetup.
Yeah.
You know, not like a big extravagant thing.
Right.
With loads of people there, just like 3 or 4 of us maybe meeting on the side of a road just to say hi. That was where I was thinking. But that's the sort of thing that I'm trying to just to get out there. Whether I need to meet other people that are suffering as well, I don't know. I just need to meet people.
Hey,
that's my thing.
It's not a bad place to start. And
that's what I think.
Knowing you as I do, those groups are awesome. They could quickly become like, let's all commiserate together, or they can become let's cheer each other on. And
that's what I'd love to find that we used to have. I feel like I need that.
Yeah.
Again, like, and I've said so many of my videos, like, if you do anything like this, please share a link to the video. But nobody seems to do it. But there are people out there that do it. I don't know. I don't know.
Positivity goes a long way. It doesn't cure everything. I'm not that guy. But there's a therapeutic value in that. When you try and do something, when you try and inspire and cheer other people on, it tends to impact. It did for me.
Yeah, exactly. That night that you were watching Chris, and then you got that call.
There you go.
That was the reason that you gave it a go.
Yes, he absolutely. It was inspiring. Like, this guy's doing it, I could do that. Like, I want to do that too. So yeah, it's good stuff, man.
So if you are doing exposure therapy, share the bloody link.
Share
in the comment.
Yes, absolutely. We'd love it on either channel for sure.
Or even maybe people want to start doing it and they don't know where to start. Just share a comment. Let's try and build maybe some kind of community. We can bounce it off the Facebook forum group that you've put together.
Yeah, sure.
Anybody that's in the podcast, if they want to do it on Facebook or wherever they want to do it, there's always.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
If they want to do it privately, whatever.
Yeah.
Even if you want to just do it yourself and just tell us about how it went.
Privately is we're almost an hour into it, but for those diehards that are still hanging in there, I got to throw this out there. I have received in the last 2 weeks more than I ever have messages that are always awesome, and I love the feedback, and I'm glad we're helping.
Are they about how rude the guy is on the right?
Very much. They are so upset by this. The guy with the funny accent. And then we'll figure out who that is, but could be me. Forget about it. But I have received more messages in the last 2 or 3 weeks than I ever have asking if I will have private conversations, Skype, phone, whatever. This is not that I don't want to do that. The issue that I have is 2. Number 1, I only have so many hours in a day. So I'm happy to answer questions any way I can. I would like it if your questions can benefit everybody. So you ask a question and we can answer it, on the podcast or in a public forum. That would be awesome. I will answer private messages. I have no problem with that. But I only have so many hours in a day. I don't do this for a living. And I am not a therapist. I'm not a licensed credential. I do not have a PhD in psychology. So
he's reading all this from a teleprompter.
It is. It's up there. So as much as I like to help and I'm willing to put the time in, I don't have enough time to do that sort of thing. I don't mind you asking. It's not offending me in any way, but I'm not qualified to do therapy over the internet or otherwise. And I would, it just doesn't, it's not right for me to do that. I can help point you to somebody who maybe can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that there is any. Is there recognized qualifications for it? I guess there is for therapy. But
There
not
absolutely
for...
is. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Where I live, for sure.
I was thinking mindfulness and all that kind of junk.
Yeah, there's a ton of people. Although, you know what? On the flip side, I've seen many people on social media call themselves anxiety coaches. I don't believe they have any particular qualifications.
I actually have a diploma in mindfulness.
Nice.
I'm allowed to use letters after my name.
Really?
But I have to pay. I think I have to pay like 30 quid, and I can have certain letters after my name.
Wow, nice.
Which is interesting.
I have letters after my name. Usually they're S-O-B.
I was going to say N-O-B.
Yeah, yes. So, they're out there, anxiety coaches online.
Whatever you want.
I don't know what that is or not. I just don't feel
comfortable.
That's it.
I mean, I have a diploma in mindfulness, and I really don't know what I'm talking about, so that's how easy it is to get one.
Sure.
That's the point.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there for anybody who's still watching. So should we wrap this up?
If anybody wants mindfulness sessions, they're £50 per hour.
There you go. Or send one large Domino's pizza to
Tandoori.com. That's it. I'm out of questions.
All right. I'm out of answers.
That's it then.
So
we hope you can relate to...
Yeah.
That was the point.
It wasn't horribly
The point
boring.
was to share Drew's experience. That was the whole point of this podcast, is so people can actually see that he's been there.
Yeah.
He knows what it feels like, and that's why he's talking from experience. So,
been there, done that.
Exactly.
All right, peeps. Thanks for tuning in as always.
Episode 17 in the bag.
In the can. I will upload 16 now. Billy's 2 days ahead of me. I'll throw that up there, and I try not to fall behind.
I'm always on schedule.
But as always, thatanxietyguy.com or on YouTube. It's always That Anxiety Guy wherever you go. Facebook,
and
Twitter,
it's the same
YouTube,
with us, Anxiety United,
Absolutely.
Wherever you look.
So comments, questions, videos, sharing, whatever you want. It's the best.
Yeah,
so.
Get the comments in. Get the questions in. I love doing this part at the end.
Yeah, it's cool. Very cool.
That's it.
All right, dude. Hopefully my audio was good on this one. Apologies for the last episode. We're working on it.
Yeah.
I need a new setup. So, all right. See you guys next time. Good luck.
For now.
Hey, what's up, guys? Drew here. In the 5 years that I've done the podcast, I've never had a sponsor. But now it's time for me to put in a little plug for the day job, the business that I own. And that business is managed WordPress hosting. So if you have a website and it runs WordPress, and you'd like WordPress hosting that makes WordPress faster, more secure, and way easier than you ever imagined it would be, then check out Helix. You can find us online at imhelix.com. That's IAMHELIX.com. We took a long time to build Helix. I'm super proud of it. It works spectacularly. We take really good care of our customers, and I promise we would take really good care of you too. So if you're in the market for WordPress hosting that will blow your mind, check out Helix. I would appreciate the consideration. I thank you for coming by and listening, and I'll see you the next time.